Anna, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're speaking with Anna Brown. She's the creator and writer of His Story, the musical. Folks can find out more information at hisstorythemusical.com. And it's being performed at the Colony, which is just north of Dallas, Fort Worth. And from what I've seen, Anna, it's incredible. I would love to get down there and watch one of these shows. What led you to want to write it? Because this is a really unique take on the gospel story. It's pop, it's hip hop. What led you to write?
Yeah, well, when I was 16 years old, that's when I really first found God for myself, and my faith became very real to me. And I just watched God completely just change me and change my life. And like, I was so excited and so like passionate about the story of Jesus and what it had done for me that I was like, oh my gosh, like I just want to go share this with anybody who will listen in the world. And God just kind of like opened doors, and I ended up going on this mission trip to Kenya with one of my doctor friends. And I didn't know what my plan was, what my future was at all. I wasn't really in, like, I loved music, but I was never a musical theater girl, like at all. I barely knew like musicals existed because at the time, like I grew up on the mission field in Europe, Ukraine, just kind of traveling around. So like, I didn't know about Broadway. I didn't know about all of that. And so, anyway, when I was in Kenya, there was this Canadian girl who kind of joined our team. And while we were there, she was like, you got to hear this musical Hamilton. And I was like, okay. And like, I did not think that I was going to like it. I was like, all I really knew from musicals was like the classics, like Sound of Music or Mary Poppins. And, I liked those when I was little, but I was like, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. But I ended up like, there was this one day I actually like pretty much got heat stroke, and I was like very sick, and me and her were just like in this little trailer, and I was just drinking water, and she's like, well, I guess like let's just like listen to Hamilton. And I was like, all right, girl, like you can do whatever. I was just like barely paying attention. And then she turns it on, and like I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, da, 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 da. I was like, yeah. I'm like, well, how is this like something that's so like hip and cool about American history, which I never cared about, never gave one, like, I mean, I barely lived in America, so I just was like, whatever. But then once we get through the whole musical, I'm just laughing and like crying, and I'm like, I'm so touched. And like all these characters and all these like figures that like I never thought twice about suddenly were like so close to my heart. And I'm like, why am I feeling all these very real emotions? And after that point, I listened to Hamilton like maybe like 100 more times. And when I got back from the trip, I really felt God begin to speak to me and just like reveal to me that this was my way to share the story of Jesus that had so changed my life, to create a musical like this. And at first, like it was just started with the idea of, oh wow, like what if somebody could make a musical about the Bible? Maybe that could help people like fall in love with Jesus the way that I like fell in love with these characters from Hamilton. And then I just like slowly but surely God was like, yeah, you. And I was just kind of mind blown. I didn't really know where to start. My sister Rachel played a little piano, and I was like, Rach, can you teach me some piano? I think I'm going to try to write this musical. And she taught me 4 chords, and then I would just say the Holy Spirit led me from there. And I ended up over the next year writing 30 songs. My parents helped me like kind of create this concept album, and the hand of God was moving all the way through it. And we ended up releasing it, and I thought that was going to be it. But, now here we are.
That's incredible, Anna. I mean, I'm just blown away by that story and your testimony. That's not what I expected. I thought you were going to be telling me how, this is like your fourth or fifth musical or whatever. That's an amazing story. So what year, give me a year, what year are we talking about when you started writing this music?
It was the beginning of 2017.
Okay. Amazing. So how many of those songs that you wrote are in this musical?
Probably it's been deconstructed and put back together a bunch of times, but maybe about 15 of the original songs and maybe like 15 new songs, so I'm really excited to share those ones with the world.
Wow. So you were literally inspired by Hamilton to make a hip hop musical about Jesus.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. I've got it. So do you see this as, I guess one of your goals is, as you said, to reach a new generation, to reach your generation and people younger than you, a little bit older than you that love this style of music. But
what was that?
But one of your goals is to reach people in your generation that love hip hop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just think about the place where I was just mentally and emotionally before I really, really understood the story of Jesus. And it just grieves me that that so many people live with that mindset of not knowing that they have a purpose and just like, the anxiety of not knowing that you're like fully and unconditionally loved by God and like what that felt like. And that just really drives me to want to just put out this invitation to all the people who were like me before, and even people who do know God, to just kind of get a fresh perspective and even be inspired to create and to just go for stuff and just trust that God's going to open all the right doors in the right time and do his will.
What was the turning point? You described the turning point for you in terms of writing this, which was Hamilton, and then you're kind of got you going on the music side of it. But there had to be somebody who got involved at some point and really got it going, because you've got Willie and Korie Robertson involved. I think Sadie Robertson is involved in some way. You've got with Broadway backgrounds involved. How did all that come about?
Well, yeah. So like I said, I think 2019, we released the concept album out into the world. And also, like I said, I didn't really know what Broadway was. Like when I heard Hamilton, I thought all it was an audio musical. I didn't know that it was like actual stage show. So I wrote his story to just be like a listening experience and didn't have like this dream of putting it on the stage yet. Like this whole journey, God just keeps introducing me to a new part of the dream, and like it's just this blind walk of faith. But so we released the album and I kind of just like moved on with my life. I thought that was going to be it. Like the response was great with just like the people who did hear it, and a lot of people were really moved by it, and like I was pretty satisfied with that. And then I think about a year or two later, something happened. Someone passed it to someone who ended up on the desk of Bruce Lazarus, who is a Broadway producer, and his friend kept being like, "You gotta listen to this musical," and Bruce was like, this 16-year-old girl wrote it about Jesus, and he's like, "It's definitely not my thing," but his friend keeps nagging him about it, so he's like, "All right, I'll just like listen so I can just tell my friend thanks, but like it's not for me." And then he told me that he ended up listening to it and just was very moved. And he ended up listening to the whole album and just being like, "I gotta be part of this." And so he reached out to me, and I was on like a different mission trip at the time. And he reached out to me and my parents and was like, "Hey, do you want to meet up in New York and like talk about this music, like putting this on the stage?" And we were like, "I guess." Like, that's like, that's crazy. But so we flew to New York. We ended up meeting him and just really hitting it off. Like his vision for bringing it to the stage and his passion was just like so real. And I just started to see what it could be. And I ended up seeing a bunch of Broadway shows there. So I got a little more of a grasp on like that world. And so we ended up making a deal, and he brought on Jeff Calhoun, who's like the director of Newsies and Bonnie and Clyde and all these different just legendary shows. And then Rick Hip Flores and Eamon Foley, and just this huge, not huge, but this incredible team of like real Broadway veterans. And I feel so like kind of inadequate, but like at the same time, God has so like been with me and just been like with this team. Each and every one of these creatives are so like gracious with me and my learning process, and are so like sweet in directing me and just like helping me along, even though I'm like super new to all of this. And and Jeff Calhoun is the one who brought on Willie and Korie. He's actually worked with them before. And when he showed them the project, they just fell in love with it too. And we're just like, we want to do whatever we can to just be part of this and help you in any way. And so it's been so great, like getting to know them and working with all of them. But it's really like, even though I didn't know this was going to be my dream, it's a dream come true seeing all of this happen.
From my understanding, you made Willie Robertson cry. I don't know if you saw that, but or not. But to make a bearded man from Duck Dynasty cry, that's some power right there in terms of the music and the message. So good job with that. It's playing in a tent.
Yes.
So tell me about that. Why?
The tent story, you wouldn't believe it. Like about a year and a half, 2 years ago, while I was I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I was, this is just one little part of the tent story, but it all ties together. So hang with me. So in Hawaii, I went up to a mountain with 3 of my friends, and we were like, we're going to pray and like hear from God, because like in the Bible, people were always going up onto the mountains and then encountering God. And we were like, we're going to do this. And so we went up to this mountain in Hawaii, and it was like, ended up being just miserable, like a terrible time. And like, we were so cold and all this stuff. But I just ended up like cuddling up in a blanket and falling asleep. And I had a dream, believe it or not, that I was standing in front of this big white tent and his story was playing inside. And then I woke up and I'm like, that's so weird. Cause like at that point we just started talking to Bruce. I thought like for sure his story would be in a theater. And I was like, that's so weird. But I ended up writing it down in my notes on my phone and then just kind of moving on. And then about a year after that, once we had done the workshop in New York and like we were ready to bring it to the next level, and we were like looking for places, Bruce called me and he's like, hey, Anna, what would you think if we put his story up in this big white circus tent? And I was like, no way. Like, I couldn't believe my ears. And I was like, Bruce, we have to do this. And I didn't tell him about the dream because I just like wanted it to all happen naturally. But like once it was official, I was like, Bruce, you wouldn't believe this, but like, this is all meant to be. And so now like, I actually live pretty close, so I can like see the tent getting set up out my window. And like every day it's just a testament to just God's like faithfulness and like his hand on this whole project. So it's just very, very exciting just knowing that God's been with it in such a miraculous way this far, that like I know whatever the outcome is, it will all be very much in God's plan. So I'm very excited.
So you've done a lot of missionary work. I'm trying to figure out, was your family missionaries?
Yes, my family was missionaries in Europe. And then the last place we were in was Ukraine, and we adopted a sibling group of 5, and then we moved back to America. And then I've just been doing some short-term separate missions on the side.
Okay. Final question for you, Anna, maybe final question. How do you want this to impact people? What do you want people who come to His Story, the musical, what do you want them to take away from it?
Well, I think every single person who comes will be in a different place, whether people who come who know God and believe in God or people who don't. I just hope that people will be able to see the story of Jesus in a new way. And I think, especially as Christians, sometimes we can get a little bit numb to the most beautiful parts of the gospel, like Jesus died on the cross for our sins. Like, we hear that so many times. And my prayer is that it will awaken people to like the reality and the beauty of it. And people will just be able to see that in a new way and really just leave with whatever they need, whatever encouragement or revelation or whatever. I just hope people will be able to see Jesus in a new way.
And it's His Story, the musical, and it's playing in the Colony, which is just north of Dallas, Fort Worth. Is the first date May the 5th?
May, and it's at Grandscape.
You went out just for a second. Give me that date again. May
5th at Grandscape, the Colony. Yes.
Okay. People can find out more information at His Story, the musical, hisstorythemusical.com.
Yes.
Anna, blown away by your testimony. Keep it up. Thanks so much.